Vice President for Sparta Group LLC, Mr. Surinder Chawla, sorry. He is heading from the board of Ratnakar Bank Limited, and Karen from Fidelity. So you guys can just start asking questions.
Is that straightforward?
Yes.
No, first let them brief about their work.
Yeah.
Then we will start asking.
Sure. I'm Karen Fields from Fidelity Charitable in the U.S. I work in the Boston area. In my job, I work with clients and families who have their charitable assets at Fidelity in a type of account called a donor-advised fund. So I work with families, helping them to make grants to charities out of the account, both domestic in the United States and international grants all over the world as well.
I'm Surinder Chawla. I look after the branch banking business for RBL Bank. We are an old bank. We are about 73 years old, but actually the transformation of the bank started about 5 years back when we got some new management into the organization. And in the last 3 to 4 years, we've been going at a growth rate of upwards of about 50% on almost all parameters, whether it's the balance sheet or the profitability. We believe there is a lot of opportunity in the country right now to do that for a few more years at least, to become a large size bank, and we need to kind of stabilize our growth rates. So that's what the bank is doing, and we are obviously present across the country and across product lines, whether it's corporate, wholesale, commercial, agri, financial inclusion, and of course the liabilities business as well.
And I'm Serge Bhachu. I am the Vice President of Administration for Sparta Group LLC. It's the family office of Deshpande in the U.S. So I handle primarily tax, legal, finance for the family office, and also handle legal and finance oversight for the Deshpande Foundation. So I get to call Caitlin every week and harass her. Is that a good enough introduction to give you a basis?
The kind of do-good world announced that they're going to have some new goals. And I'm going to be a little bit cynical here, but please reprimand me if you feel it's appropriate. For most people at the announcement, that was a word processing change. Delete millennium, paste sustainable. Okay? So what that means is that they actually were just putting a buzzword in front of the last two words. So you can sit back and say, well, is that important? Does that matter? So I thought it was important, so I went to New York and I sat through 130 presentations at 6 different conferences on the Sustainable Development Goals. I went to the highest level SDG Business Forum. I went to the Social Good Summit. I went to the Business Call to Action. I went to et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. In not one of those 130 presentations did the presenters say the following thing: please give us your resources because we know how to spend them sustainably. Not one presenter said, we've learned over the past 15 years how to do this better, and so you should give us your resources because we'll go meet these goals sustainably. Nobody said a word about that. In fact, most of the presentations didn't even recognize that there were models underneath the goals that added up to the amount of money. Does anybody know how much money they asked for? So I'm going to give you the amount, and I'm going to think if you ask if you think it's a big number. The number was $4 trillion. Okay, who thinks $4 trillion is a big number? So there's really one other important thing you need to know is there's also a couple of words that get added at the end of 4 trillion. They're spelled P-E-R-Y-E-A-R. So my thesis is that using sustainable in the same sentence as $4 trillion per year is the largest oxymoron in the history of the world. And yet this was stated by virtually every presenter in every session all over New York. So, the question is, what do we do about that? So I'd love to hear your thoughts on how the world is going to actually replace the unsustainable models with sustainable models, and whether financial professionals and donors and others have any particularly responsibility or should be particularly concerned about whether that gets fixed. And I'll just add that I think if we want to fix it, we have about 18 months. If we don't fix it in the next 18 months, everything's going to be locked in. All the big players with the big money are going to have laid out their programs, and they'll be lopping off 40% of the money up north before it gets down here, and we'll never get anything sustainable done. So that's my question. Just to kick off the session.
I think one of the things, first of all, I think it's a great point and a great question, and I think it's something a lot of donors are thinking about. And I'm going to turn it over to Serge in a minute, because I think the way that the Deshpande Foundation structures a lot of their grants is to really encourage and really make it into a situation where the grantees have to become sustainable. You know, they'll make it clear up front. This is 1 year of funding to cover, 4 staff people at this family planning clinic. But after this year, you need to be figuring out your plan to be sustainable beyond that. And we're here to mentor you and support you and help you with marketing and connections. And I know I probably just glossed over that. But
No, I think that's great. I think to answer your question, fundamentally, whether you're an NGO or any other type of organization that's trying to improve other people's lives, you've got to do it in such a way so that the value proposition is clear to that stakeholder. So unlike a for-profit organization where it's clear who the stakeholders are, it's shareholders, and they can be pretty punishing if you're not delivering value. In the nonprofit context, the people that you're trying to serve don't necessarily have a strong voice. So at the Deshpande Foundation, I don't know if you visited the agricultural programs, for example, in the field. Our key focus is what are we going to do in the local community that they're asking for, and if they're asking for it, are they willing to pay for it? Are they actually recognizing that there's value being generated by that activity? So you can also, there's different sustainability models, obviously. One is you have revenue generation in your activity. Second is that you have private-public partnerships where for-profit entities, via CSR vehicles and the like, will be willing to cover or subsidize some of that expense. And then thirdly, it's public funds. If, for example, with Akshay Patra subsidizes on an annual basis that midday meal program. I think most people would acknowledge that there's massive value created by Akshay Patra. And so then how do you figure out on the private side, how do you do with private donor contributions? And continuing on a regular basis to improve the technology, to improve the delivery mechanism, logistics, supply chain, and also getting public contributions to do that. So for me to answer your question, I don't know if that's a problem solvable in the next 18 months, but it's really thinking about it from a value proposition perspective and then channeling your resources in a way to accommodate that. And that's what we do here. Each of the programs, as Karen mentioned some of them, you all have seen what the different programs we have here. Constant focus from the dean and from all the staff here on how do you do that in such a way to truly be sustainable. And there's some very finite ways to do that.
So of the 130 people I listened to, none of them know what Akshay Patra is. 0. And yet it's one of the most significant programs in the world on sustainability. So 0 people know about it. So you can do all this great work, but it won't change anything among the people who are asking for the $4 trillion per year.
But it has to be an effort, right? So if we're aware of the fact that this recession is going on, one of the things that over time will happen when you're trying to do this from the bottom up, there has to be some emphasis on the policy side as well. That has not been necessarily a focus of the Deshpande Foundation to try to get into the policy conversations. I can tell you that Rockefeller Foundation in the U.S. have some interest in participating at that, bringing it from that level down. But until you actually have results, it's difficult to debate on policy unless you have some tangible evidence, some metrics, some things you can point to saying this works. Akshay Patra, while the people in New York sitting inside, you were sitting, might not have heard of it. Bill Clinton was extolling it through his travels in East Asia end of last year. Desh was traveling with him for 2 weeks. The thing that Bill kept talking about was Akshay Patra. So that word is getting out there. That model is getting out there. This conference, okay, the conferences like this, you go home spreading the word. But you're right. I mean, there has to be more work done on that. But I think it was a balance between talking too much about policy without really having some evidentiary to support it. Whereas we like to just be able to do this. It is a for-profit model. We're trying to figure out who our stakeholders are to create value. And I think hopefully there will be the same.
From a financial perspective, and purely talking from an Indian perspective a little more, I think three things are happening in India right now. Clearly, we needed some policy intervention in this country. And a lot of good things have been started in the last maybe 6 months or so by the government, whether it's about the startup initiative or about a skill building mission or things like that, which have really added some sort of a buzz around the country on these items. And I think over a period of time, these things will take much better shape on the ground than what they have right now. And this will start to build the ecosystem in a much stronger way. And obviously, that would lead to a little bit more sustainability on these initiatives. From a financial perspective, as a lender, whenever we do those lending exercises and whatever initiatives that we do take up, one of the key core items that we do look at is to figure out whether this person will be able to get revenue out of it sooner than later. Because we don't want to fuel and fund consumption only, because that's not going to help any of us. In fact, one of the common problems of the microfinance in India, in certain areas of the country, has started to become overfunding to the same customer, right? And we had to really pull back some of the places that funding was happening and build models around to make sure that we are able to identify better business models around it also. So that's a lot of work that's getting done in India. Are we there yet? Definitely no. There's a lot more that needs to be done. But I think the journey has started in the country as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, banker. Actually, you are growing. So in a for-profit model. So from here, if you want to go this or scale or expand, so suddenly the cost will be more and the financial sustainability will be struggle. So during that course, from one step to another step.
10 other parameters in mind is very critical as well. So at an organization level, we're very particular of what kind of costs we're building at the same time and what kind of risks we are also taking at the same time. So those measures are always at the forefront when we are looking at what profit figure and what sales figure we have to protect to the analyst community. There are several examples in India where people have felt that money is easy. There are private equity investors sitting to give you that money, and if you can just show a high trajectory of growth, money will follow. And that's happening today in some sectors very, very rampantly as well. In the long run, they will have to get the right amount of profit and the right amount of return for that money. Without that, these businesses will not be sustainable, and that has to happen. We've so far been able to keep all the costs as well as risk parameters on the check. And with that in check, if you're able to grow at 45-50%, that's a good achievement, I would say. So that's very, very consciously in our mind at all times.
How can we actually manage the expectations of the two? I know this is more of a personal conflict that is existing. How do investors manage this?
What area are you working in?
So let's say education. So how can an investor manage this trade-off between this gestation period versus return on investment versus social impact that gets created?
I think it's very important right at the beginning stage to get the investor which has the right understanding of the business model that is creating as well. If the investor wants returns tomorrow, and if the business model doesn't justify that, then you're bound to make mistakes around it, right? And therefore you have to be very careful. One of the things I think we were chatting yesterday as well is to be able to figure out investors and people who are with you, or any partner for that matter, who is got the right understanding of what you're wanting to do as the entrepreneur. If that match is not there, it's better to part ways and not take the money at that time and wait for somebody to come along who gives you the right money. Not all sectors will be able to give returns immediately. Gestations will depend on the business models, the environment, the ecosystem, so many other parameters that go into it. And to make top line as your only criteria will definitely bring problems later on, and therefore not advisable. So I would actually request you to go back to your business model and think about what partners you want to partner with. It's easy to come under that pressure because the money is important as well, but that's a call that you should take and say, no, I will not do it right now.
Just adding to that, while I'm part of the bank, most startups today, the understanding by the investors is pretty low. Nobody knows as to how it will take off. So in that scenario, how do banks or financial institutions look at these startups, and what is the plan from the bank side in terms of understanding this as a segment and move forward?
See, that's a tricky question from the bank's perspective as well, and you're aware of the discussion that we had internally in the organization. Bank, and I'm talking particularly about our bank, we want to be in this sector, but at the same time, we cannot be so aggressive in the sector that we realize that we're not able to get the right partners to whom we are lending, and we create a problem for the organization. But finally, we are a for-profit organization, and there are equity shareholders behind us as well. So it's a measured approach that we are taking, and therefore not all proposals will go through, but some will definitely go through if there is a reasonable confidence that people in the organization can develop about the business model of that organization. So that's point number one. But point number two is that as the startup environment becomes a lot more, so to say, popular in the country, and there are a lot more people who come forward and start taking up that initiative, I think there will be a lot of evolution of how banks think about startups as well. So there will be models that will come around. There will be opportunities that will come around, and therefore it is a learning process. Like it's a learning process for the startup, it's a learning process right now for the organization as well. But things will evolve, and I think every 3 to 6 months things will keep changing very rapidly in this space. And I don't see why after maybe a year and a half, couple of years, banks would not be eagerly wanting to fund startups like some of the investors are able to do today.
Just to follow up on that, so both questions, I think kind of relate to the same point, which is there is a gap, a funding gap, and it's in India, it's also in the US. When you're starting a business, whether it's a social enterprise or pure-fledged for-profit enterprise, there's a funding gap between ground zero and when you get to a certain scale. Right? This is a fundamental problem that exists in the US as well. I think the solution for that is, again, at the policy level, is bringing banks, is bringing impact investors, whether they're in India or the US, foundations to come together and collectively figure out how they fill that funding gap, rather than banks operating independently from each other. I think there's a capital resource available that, if it's properly managed and you understand the way that you run your balance sheet, you have certain asset mix, right? This should be no different than that. This should be considered very high risk. It can only be considered part of your CSR hopefully someday, or it can be considered part of your marketing expense, what have you. Not big dollars have to go into this in order to have a massive impact. But until there's that collective will to say, yes, part of my balance, part of my P&L is going to go by the wayside. Same thing with the U.S. So it's only right now that nonprofits in the U.S. are allowed to do this type of impact investing. I think that's a big issue, and it continues to be an issue. In your illustration, it's also important to pick the right investor, but this is more of a fundamental society problem as well. It's not just the individual investor and their expectations. Because hopefully, as Surinder said, You have to develop a relationship with the person, have a good understanding of what they want, have a relationship beyond the capital, but also they contribute to you. What else can they add? Can they help you grow faster? Can they help you think about growth? Can they help you make good decisions? That type of thing. All those things are missing now, here and in the U.S.
Excuse me. I had an opportunity to work with a company which was giving financial advice to Mahindra and Mahindra just 5 years back. And one day, what happened? Mahindra and Mahindra would like to have a coffee plant at Munnar, Kerala. And one more option was to have a manufacturing unit in Gujarat. And he called upon near about 8 companies for giving the financial advice. And after having thorough investigation of all the information, all the financial advisors, including my company, what they came up with, don't go for coffee estate Munnar, and please go for the manufacturing unit at Gujarat. And Mr. Mahindra, he was actually emotionally attached with that project B, which was at Munnar, and he was not that happy. And my boss observed that, and then the very next day he changed the entire worksheet of the financial model, which suits and which meets the expectation of Mr. Mahindra. Then how ethically or how feasible it was? It is actually from the financial models point of view. Actually happened.
So coming from the consumer side of some of the financial services, valuations and ROI projections are beauty now of the beholder, right? You can make it whatever you want to make it if you believe it. So I think it's just a question of integrity of how you want to run the business at the end of the day. You have to have confidence. Your reputation follows your work, right? So if you're just going to be a yes man, whenever somebody says I want to see it a certain way, you can live right that way. I think you'll have a lot better experience in life if people can look at you and say, that person has a lot of integrity, has credibility, because he proposed a certain project with certain assumptions throughout years, and you really performed that way. Now, having said that, there are pressures in life when you're dealing with that level of person. But you just have to make those choices. I think fundamentally you want to just act with integrity. You don't want to, because somebody tells you to do something. Financial models are, they're just the beauty of the whole type of stuff. You can see by how analysts, I'm watching the TV here every morning, Bloomberg or, other channels. People will talk about the same stock, and you'll have these wide price disparity, right? That's because somebody's sitting around with their Excel spreadsheet saying, here's my input, here's what I think the stock is worth. It's kind of like trying to predict the weather. It's not as good as that.
Yeah, I agree with what you said. Essentially, the consultant's role is supposed to be to make sure that the right advice is given as per whatever he thinks is right or whatever the data is presenting. But if there is a motive which is more than that or a different motive than that, then obviously numbers and statistics can be presented in any which way you like, right? Everything can be supported, or you can vociferously go against it if you want to go that way. Wrong advice, I would say, but it happens in the real world many times.
Investors in India are mostly not familiar with the concept of convertible notes, which is very popular in the US and everywhere else. Although it follows these standard terms and also, and if a startup is at a stage where it cannot possibly evaluate what the valuation is going to be, we think that convertible note is the best way to go about it. However, convincing becomes a very hard deal because nobody knows about convertible notes. So how do you think they should go about it? Is equity fundraising is the only way out, which is perhaps not gelling with our expectations? Should we sort of make this compromise to?
No, I understand what you're saying. It's a very valid question. There are lots of people who would rather not, give out equity so early in the system because there is a lot of valuation, even which they don't understand right now what may happen. Right, there's a lot of changes that happen in the course of the startup journey. But India is a complex market. There are several markets which are still not developed. Very few people understand a lot of concepts, and I understand your predicament, but these are things which will not get solved very soon as well. like I said, there are some markets where the government is taking initiative and things will change, but it's a long journey for India right now. I honestly don't have a solution for your problem. I don't know what would be a possible solution unless you start looking at alternate sources of funding. And there are some newer versions of that coming through as well, apart from whatever traditional sources that we've had in this country. But there is the PE funds, which are obviously there, but that's equity. So that's a source of fund, but there is a problem there. Then there are other funds or there are other opportunities like peer-to-peer funding, which may start to come up, or a concept called crowdfunding, which may start to come up as well. But these are all items which will take some more time. Really no answers and no complete answers for that.
I think that's right. I mean, you try to, rather than taking a one-size-fits-all approach, just looking at all types of variety of funding sources. That makes a lot of sense. There's also CCPS, the convertible equity. That's the other alternative that I've seen here in India. But the problem is when you start getting into convertible debt without getting too much nuance, that's fine for the company that like that approach. On the investor side, you want to see some sort of commitment from the company as well. And that's why equity would be more attractive. But it becomes less about how much of the company you're giving up and more about the relationship you're developing with the investor and their value add beyond the capital. Because you can actually have, you want to get too cute with the dilution and everything else, because an X size pie of this size pie is a lot more interesting than a smaller one. So it depends upon how you think about it.
These are all examples of the fact that the way we've structured the financial services industry, it doesn't scale. I mean, just here's some numbers. 20 years ago, $8 trillion in today's money raised their hand, mainly in the North, and said, we'd like our money to have impact. And they really did want it to have impact. They didn't want it just to have negative screens, which is what the financial service industry delivered over the next 5 years. And then there really was very little innovation in the impact space for the next 10 years. And then they adopted impact investing. But impact investing is $60 billion. Crowdfunding in five years has gotten to be equal to impact investing over 20 years. So those numbers are both tiny in comparison to the 8 trillion. The biggest number is renewable energy, which just did 330 billion. So that's the biggest move to impact that we've seen globally. And so you look at those numbers, 330 billion renewable energy, 180 billion aid, 60 billion impact investing, 60 billion, give or take a few crowdfunding. None of them are even close to $1 trillion. And we actually need trillions of dollars of high impact, modest return businesses, because that's what we just announced. That's what sustainable development goals are. Trillions of dollars of high impact, modest return businesses.
Well, I think part of the issue is that the system has to have the capacity to accept those funds. I don't necessarily think the system has the capacity today to accept those funds. What I mean by that is that there are enough businesses out there and entrepreneurs that could actually handle that resource effectively. I think over time we're going to get there because the market will. For example, the United Seed Fund, you may have been really cool here. Will's fund is investing in companies in India in that, try to do that social entrepreneurship model. But we're looking for for-profit returns for businesses that are going to have massive impact. Now they've only been doing that. The United States has been doing that in some variation for the last 10 years. I think once you are able to see that you are able to generate a modest return, if you will, you'll see more capital going to that area. You'll see banks participating. You'll see more innovation there. Again, it's got to be bottoms up, not top down. Until people see that, and Karen's seeing it as well over time. As you see more and more the capacity of the system to accept that money, it'll happen. Now the question becomes, how do you accelerate it? How do you accelerate the capacity? How do you accelerate the ability to accept that money? Until you do that, I mean, that's like saying, you come to Hubballi 7-8 years ago and put a whole bunch of money in and see what happens. That won't work. You have to build it incrementally over time and see where you're able to experiment a little bit. You have to see where that actual return, if you will, is tangible. And so you can build upon that over time. Same way growing entrepreneurs. I mean, that's why there's such a focus here for India is, I mean, great that way in terms of trying to promote entrepreneurship, developing accelerators to train budding entrepreneurs, to give them resources, whether it's capital or intellectual capital, financial capital. That's all happening. But I think to your question, you know, how do you get people with the means to work, collaborate together on the right question? That's the problem. They're not necessarily focused on the right question. But I think what Surinder doing with his bank, what we try to do, what Karen tries to do, you'll see a multiplier effect over that over time.
I think on the donor side, one of the challenges with impact investing is that it takes a lot of time and effort to identify opportunities that really align with your very specific interest area. And what I mean is, it's while the space is growing rapidly, it's not very consumer friendly. For the average family that I work with that may have lots of capacity to support different investments in different projects, while finding impact investments, whether equity or debt, I mean, it takes a lot of work. It's not turnkey, it's not a product in most cases. And
Should it be? Could it be?
I mean,
Should
it's about the
Fidelity
numbers.
invest money in actually solving that problem?
Well, I think it comes from folks like us, right? So I push Karen and her team regularly with, you know, can we do this, can we do this, can we do this? And their folks internally have to, from a compliance perspective, figure out, okay, we can use this approach for investing in India. We can do this. We're not very comfortable doing X, Y, Z. But over time, as the demand is created by the investor donor community, it will happen. Because
So what if it's not that hard?
what do you mean?
Okay, so I just came from a conference. They had a panel on Indian Americans. Bridgespan ran the numbers. Take the population of Indian Americans, 75% of them were above normal income levels in North America. Multiply that by an average U.S. citizen giving rate. They then surveyed 24 people and figured out that the average Indian American citizen, if they gave at the average rate, would direct 40% on average to India. So that's $1.2 billion per year. I could assemble a portfolio of scaling social enterprises from the people I've met today that would be one of the best portfolios of scaling social enterprises ever presented to the entire world. But I could also assemble one from the conference I was at last week, and they would be different portfolios. So I can fix your problem, and there's the $1.2 billion. So I'm saying it's not that hard, but people have to step up and say, there are specific people who have money on the sidelines who, if presented that portfolio, would move money off the sidelines, but they will never see those portfolios the way the system currently works.
Yeah, I think if you talk to Will, you probably have a little different perspective on whether how durable those dollars are. But yeah, it's a good conversation. I mean, I think in a consulting abstract world, that might be the case. I think in the real world, when you ask somebody to write a check, it's a little bit of a different ballgame.
So one of the multinational companies, the employees of a multinational company, so those who are working abroad, they want to donate their part of salary to a non-profit civil society. So can they accept that money from the individuals, and what are the procedure to get that money?
So are they?
For the development purposes.
So is the employee, where's the employee located?
No, the employee directly, he wants to give directly to the civil society organization, to the NGOs in India.
No, when he's working in the US?
Yes.
Yeah.
There are about 2,000-3,000 employees.
Yeah, okay.
The employee don't want to handle that money.
Right.
He is directing them to, if they accept, you give directly to them.
Yeah, so if, for example, we can speak to the US. If you have an employee in the US that's earning money in the US and they want to contribute to money, an NGO in India, they can do that via doing some organization like Karen's organization if it's at scale. So that they were to set up a fund and say, There's certain, obviously, there's certain limitations dollar-wise in terms of it's not feasible from an economic model, but certain organizations in the U.S. will accept grants for the benefit of Indian NGOs. Typically, you have to do that for a certain purpose, and it has to be at a certain dollar sign in order to make the economics work, because they have to do basically expenditure responsibility, where they have to basically validate that that charity can be deemed as a U.S. charity. So there's some mechanics behind it that are really complicated. I think the other alternative might be things like KIBA.
Or like a friend setting up a friend. The organization, the NGO in India has a U.S. arm, like a Friends of other.
Right. So that's Akshay Patra is like that.
Okay.
Akshay Patra is like that. We have a U.S. entity, Akshay Patra, that we take donations from the U.S. and then we transfer the funds over here to the Indian section.
That's probably better for the smaller donors.
No. They don't have any arm in US, but they have FCRA registration.
Yeah.
Can they get directly to their FCRA account?
Yeah, but I think it's just because of the dollar amounts involved. I mean, if it's $10,000, then it's relatively straightforward. If it's small dollars, then it's not anything.
Okay, there is a limit for.
It's just financially not viable for the organizations in the U.S. to process that money now. Now, there are, Karen can talk about some other efforts.
So I think the question you're asking is something a lot of U.S. employees or U.S. citizens are asking. You know, a lot of people want to send money internationally to NGOs, maybe in the country that they are from. So as a result, there are new options available. The reason it's complicated is because in the U.S., people are required to, for tax purposes, provide a lot of information about the NGO in the other country to show that the money was spent charitably. So it's a lot of work, and the organizations in the U.S. that take on the work charge a fee. So unless you're making sending a large amount of money, it might not be worth it, because everyone who facilitates that type of transfer is charging a fee. That said, there is an effort in the U.S. For sort of a repository to be formed where foreign organizations are vetted and sort of put into an approved status. It's been a slow project, but there is a lot of collaboration and a lot of interest in the U.S. in making international giving easier. So it's a long answer, but I think we are moving towards it being an easier process.
I have a question around raising funds from U.S.-based high net worth individuals as well as Indian-based high net worth individuals on the same term sheet. Apparently there's a problem with the round trip issue where Indian high net worth individuals invest in a company that might be like a U.S.-based C corp, whose funds eventually come back here, or it's a highly taxable event for the Indian high net worth individual. And so I represent the AUC, the American Foreign Publicity Group. So like, we're based in the U.S. We find passion to work here. Our seed funding comes from the U.S. So it only comes in U.S.-based kind of notes. Then when we execute here, we realize we need Indian expertise. Then they can't invest because of this round trip tax issue. And I get the sense that I'm probably not the first person that's dealing with this. So are there any workarounds with that issue?
So you have a U.S. entity that are investing in the Indian subsidiary?
Correct.
So why would you just have them investing in the Indian subsidiary and the Indian side of the U.S. subsidiary?
Because we have note holders at the parent who see the exit happening at the top. And so then if you have two different, then there's like an issue around what's the valuation of the subsidiary, what's the level. And that's created so much friction that the Indian people are ready to walk away because of just how complex that is.
So what if you had a holding company about global that was in Singapore or somewhere like that?
Okay, so like Mauritius, Singapore. I heard that there was some adverse, like regulators were kind of picking up on that, and there's some risk going that route. But if you feel that's
No,
the way to go.
Yeah.
Again, this is a 2-minute
You're
conversation.
getting about two seconds worth of thought on it. So.
Yeah. I just was wondering if it was very common. I didn't know if it was very common. I get the feeling it's very common.
I've seen it. I've seen it be problematic. Not the round tripping issue, but it's generally, it doesn't make a lot of sense when you have one company that's creating value in India, and you've got this subsidiary in the U.S. that has zero value associated with it, and somehow all the capital is invested in the U.S. entity. So for different reasons, it's been not practical. The U.S. person could invest in the Indian entity directly, a lot easier than the Indian ones can do in the U.S. So I don't know what the purpose of the U.S. entity is now.
Well, we operate in 5 countries, and so the U.S. parent issues funds to each of those countries because it has a child subsidiary. That's 5. It's okay.
Anyone else?
Any more questions from
I have one more. So it's around working capital, around debt. So we work in water, and governments are the biggest capex financiers in this space, but they're horrible at paying on time. So there's a level of oxygen that's needed to kind of bide you over. And so in India, I found that the venture debt space is super early. The cost of capital is really high, it's like 20%. Which is super, it's not possible for a social enterprise to take on that cost of capital. So have you guys heard of any other innovative ways that you can manage that reimbursement side of things?
I think it says it's a for-profit or a non-profit or not for-profit.
So, the whole Indian economy bit works on very high interest rates on both sides, right? And therefore, to expect that the rates will come down, cost of capital will come down in India super fast is not going to happen. But the good thing about India is for profit organizations, there are returns which are a little super normal as well. And therefore, it's still working out for India. But on the non-profit organizations that we have given you, it's a huge issue, and in fact, that's the question that Lady asked. That we don't want to divest equity, and what are the other sources of funds we don't have any. That is a genuine problem in India, and probably will continue for some more time. But there are solutions coming around. I think the financial system, the policy ecosystem, all of it is encouraging all the financials to go that side and start thinking about how to develop models around it. But there are no, honestly, quick solutions around it as we speak. It probably takes some more time before it really comes around. The normal saying is that banks, the commercial organizations that they are, will not go that side unless they're very sure that the work is going in the right direction, or if there is a serious amount of collateral available. Either which way it doesn't work out for the kind of equity we're talking about. So a huge problem, no easy solution right now. Till then, I guess we have to go to these type of funding opportunities if they are available.
That's a good point. I know that there's been some skepticism lately because the FCRA rules have made it a little more difficult to get debt from offshore. So there have been some NGOs who are willing, so donor advised ones that are willing to provide working capital loans, basically credit facilities, where you cover, depending on where your fall is, $2 or $3 or something. I think the most recent FCRA announcement was kind of good.
Any more questions from the audience?
Can I question on the trading can be I just want to implement the HFT, high frequency trading, since I'm from broking industry. I just want to check how high HFT can influence or to have an impact on the retail traders. Because we have seen that because of HFT there is a huge volatility in the markets. So,
You are not an earnings call, that's it, so I would not like to venture again.
I guess my only response there is just be thankful you're not in China. This is tame compared to what the Chinese are doing at retail investors. We're talking about 90% losses as opposed to 20 or whatever it is right now. Longer term, that's just maturation of the market. Indian regulators are pretty solid, and that's heavy and everybody else. They understand these issues. They're going to be watching. I think they're far more mature securities market here than we are in other emerging economies. So just a matter of longer term. They have to manage that, and that's unfortunately you have to have a very long view on these things as well as a retail investor. If you have confidence in a company's performance, the gyrations, short-term gyrations, shouldn't affect the long-term.